I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, the British MI6 spy, Christopher Steele, was going to make a planned video appearance at a Garry Kasparov event, a Trump-hating Garry Kasparov event. And Christopher Steele backed out of that video appearance. He appears to have gotten cold feet. And I believe I'm quoting Anne Appelbaum by saying cold feet. Yes, Appelbaum said that Steele had gotten cold feet. And under the advice of his legal counsel, I want to remind everybody, Christopher Steele is the MI6 British spy who created the Steele dossier, the Trump dossier, that dossier that kicked off the entire 2-year-plus Russia collusion witch hunt, which has now largely been disproven and most recently has been disproven by Michael Cohen's testimony. Alexander, what do you make of Christopher Steele first agreeing to appear and then, after Cohen's testimony, deciding to not appear?
Well, first of all, I think he was absolutely right not to appear after Michael Cohen's testimony because, frankly, the entire Trump dossier, the Steele dossier, this extraordinary dossier, which you're absolutely right to say, by the way, is the foundation document of the whole collusion case. That has now completely collapsed. I mean, one thing that Michael Cohen repeatedly did and has consistently done is that he has denied the central plank of this dossier, which is that he met with the Russians in a secret meeting in Prague. In fact, we can say now definitely that meeting never happened, and we can also say definitely that none of the other claims that appear in that dossier have been proved to be true. So it is not surprising that Steele, who is facing legal action by all sorts of people that he has implicated in this extraordinary dossier of his, is now avoiding appearing in public places where he could put himself in further jeopardy. The wonder is that he agreed to speak at all. I think he was hoping that with the Mueller report coming out soon, something would come up and he'd be able to say something that would make him, bring him to international attention and would show, what a good person he is. But anyway, he now realizes that can't happen, that his dossier has collapsed, and not surprisingly, and perhaps very wisely from a legal point of view, he has chosen to stay silent.
Now, Steele you mentioned that his dossier was the central foundation of the Trump-Russia collusion witch hunt. For the past 2+ years, I can't recall a time where I've seen Christopher Steele appear in public. I have never seen him speak to CNN, to MSNBC, to the New York Times, to the Washington Post. And right when he was about to appear at this Kasparov Atlantic Council, and Appelbaum, you can get into these characters as well as to who they are and why they're having a Trump-hating event, why they're organizing a Trump-hating event. He backed out of it last minute because he got cold feet. He's going to go back into hiding. How is it possible, Alexander, to have the man that is the foundation, the man behind the entire biggest story that has consumed U.S. media on the front pages of U.S. News for the past 2+ years? How is it possible that he's been in hiding for all this time and has not appeared anywhere? And also get into these characters that were trying to take Steele and bring them into the public spotlight for this appearance.
Right. I think the first thing to say about these people, Garry Kasparov is a Russian chess master, or at least he's actually not from Russia, but he's connected to Russia and had Russian citizenship for a long time. He is a bitter enemy of Vladimir Putin's, a very, very bitter enemy on the extreme liberal end of the political spectrum. Anne Appelbaum is the wife of Radek Sikorski, who was the former Polish foreign minister. She is also a very, very strong critic of Vladimir Putin and of Russia. And this is a group taken together which does not want to see better relations between the United States and Russia, at least while Vladimir Putin is president. And for that reason, bitterly oppose Donald Trump. I mean, they're also, in the case of Kasparov and Anne Appelbaum, I think pretty liberal in their political views generally, and that's probably another reason why they don't like Donald Trump. So they have every reason to want to see Trump fail. They have every reason to want to see Russia and the United States remain at odds with each other, and it's entirely understandable that they would see Christopher Steele as some sort of a hero because he's providing the evidence, if you can call it evidence, of the collusion between Trump and Putin, which they want to believe in. Now, coming to the question of Steele being in hiding, that has been an extraordinary fact, given the central role this collusion, this dossier he produced has played in constructing the collusion narrative. You would have thought that the FBI, Robert Mueller, the various congressional committees looking into this, both in the Senate and in the House, and the media, would all be going to Christopher Steele and subpoenaing him and demanding that he come and answer questions and explain facts about the dossier. And it is a remarkable fact that has never happened. And it is entirely true what you said, that he has not appeared in any of the major media, either in the United States or incidentally in Britain. The UK, even though he's British, the only journalist I know whom he has spoken to any great extent is Luke Harding, who is the bitterly anti-Putin a Russia correspondent of The Guardian, and Christopher Steele was the source, apparently, of Luke Harding's book, which is called Collusion, and which alleges collusion between Donald Trump and the Russians. So it's remarkable that he hasn't spoken, and there's two reasons for that. He doesn't want to speak, because obviously he's got legal issues, and I suspect he's also by now got doubts about the dossier. And the people who have been prosecuting these investigations don't want to speak with him, because they must have figured out by now that he is not a reliable source or witness.
Yeah, and I'm sure Christopher Steele knows that his dossier was pretty much completely fabricated.
Well,
was a made-up story. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he'd be delusional if he didn't by now. I mean, he must realize, whoever the sources for that dossier were, he must realize by now that it has no foundation, in fact.
I wonder if, Christopher Steele is, sitting in the UK scratching his head saying, I know I put this dossier together. I got paid for it as opposition research. I made the money. I never, in my wildest dreams, thought that the Democrats and Hillary Clinton and Podesta and all these guys, Robbie Mook, would actually run with this dossier the way they did. I wonder if he's sitting there saying, God, these guys really put me in a real big jam here.
Well, as I understand two things about that. Firstly, I understand that he was passionately anti-Trump, and that during the 2016 election and after, he was heavily lobbying the FBI to carry out investigations of Trump. Based on his dossier. So I think that he probably didn't think that it was going to, he didn't think that it had run out of control. I think he wanted it to take on these enormous dimensions that it had. At the same time, and I think this is something that I find really rather disturbing, he was apparently shocked when the dossier was leaked. So he was campaigning behind the scenes, but he didn't want to come out into the light of day. And that, I think, has really, really distressed him.
Because he knew that dossier was pure fiction.
Well, I don't know if he knew that. I don't know exactly what he knew. I mean, we must be very careful before we make assumptions. But it certainly doesn't look good for him that, as I said, he seems to have wanted to operate behind the scenes rather than in public.
And remind us once again, Luke Harding, who he is, because was it not Luke Harding, Alexander, who wrote that story in The Guardian, I believe, with Manafort entering the Ecuador embassy to meet with Julian Assange. Is it the same Luke Harding that we're talking about?
It is indeed the same Luke Harding who is constantly finding all kinds of Russian scare stories to frighten, the good people of Britain with, most of which are wildly and bizarrely far-fetched. There's also the same Luke Harding who's been accused of plagiarism by various people. And who, frankly, I think is slightly deluded. If you want to see, if our viewers want to get a good impression of the kind of person Luke Harding is, there's a video out somewhere of an interview between him and Aaron Mate, who basically takes him to pieces. I mean, he just absolutely obliterates him. So, I mean, this is somebody, and it incidentally obliterates him on the collusion allegations, which Luke Harding based to a large extent on the information that Christopher Steele gave him. So, it's quite a remarkable video if you want to watch it.
Yeah, Aaron Mate really destroys Luke Harding in that video. And, this is an interesting point, and we'll close out this. Before Trump derangement syndrome, Alexander, as you mentioned all these names, Kasparov, Appelbaum, and Luke Harding, before Trump derangement syndrome, I think there was something else that existed, and that's Putin derangement syndrome. And all these people, even Christopher Steele, all this cast of characters, I think they have a little of PDS, Putin derangement syndrome, because they're so obsessed with Putin and trying to take him down, where I think Putin sits in the Kremlin is like, he doesn't give a crap about Kasparov or Appelbaum or any of these guys. But these guys are so obsessed with Putin, it's quite ridiculous.
I think that's entirely right. Looking at some of the things these people have said about Putin is absolutely bizarre. Luke Harding, by the way, was one of the people who heavily promoted the story of Putin being a billionaire. I mean, having stolen billions, 40 billion or 200 billion or some other phenomenal sum. And, they are the people who have invented this demonic image of Putin, which I suspect by now they largely believe in, even whatever, they started out doing. And it's taken them over. I mean, they've become obsessed by it. They're totally possessed by it. And they've also now similarly become possessed in the same way by their mania about Trump. And of course, to their minds, I mean, the one is simply, the same coin. It's one side of the coin as the other. I mean, it's the same coin in both cases.
Yeah, they've taken the one and projected it onto the other.
Absolutely. Must be very strange to be people like that. I mean, if you really want to see conspiracy theorists, look at the people we've just been talking about.
Yeah, they should be the ones getting demonetized on YouTube.
Well, indeed, so.
Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on the subscribe button down below and click on the notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. Visit the Duran shop, pick up a t-shirt, help support the Duran. In the description box down below, you'll find links to our PayPal and Patreon pages. Donate to the Duran. That really helps us out a lot. And you can get a copy of this video in audio format. Follow us on iTunes and Soundcloud. And go to theduran.com to see the articles that Alexander is linking up to every day. Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Thank you once again. Until next time, everybody, take care.